Welcome to today's episode of Nurturing the Whole Child with Teacher Miriam. Today we look at raising a strong-willed child. So we start by asking ourselves, who is a strong-willed child? A lot of people will refer to a strong-willed child as this child who is defiant, this child who is stubborn, and this child who is generally difficult to parent. But is that really who a strong-willed child is? We need to look at a strong-willed child from a positive perspective. In this case, a strong-willed child is this child who can be described as expressive, a tenacious child, a resolute child, a determined child. This very deliberate choice of positive adjectives to refer to this child, because a strong-willed child is not a child who wants to be toyed around. It is a child who would want to do things for themselves as opposed to what others say they should do. And of course, a lot of times these children are prone to power struggles with adults like parents, like teachers, like caregivers, because they are not a yes kind of a child. They are not this child that you will always tell them, sit down, and they just sit and fold their hands. They are the kind of children that you'll tell them sit down and they'll ask you why. I'm comfortable standing. And as adults, we don't get very comfortable with such kind of children. But do we have such children in our families, in our classes as teachers? Of course we do. So how do we raise these children? I'm going to share a few tips that I believe will work for those parents, for those educators, and for those caregivers who are dealing with strong-willed children. Always remember, a strong-willed child is not a stubborn child, is not a child who is difficult to take care of. This is a child who is strong, just as the word strong-willed is a child with a strong will. A tenacious child, a courageous child. So for starters, let us look at them from a positive point of view before we even look at how do we raise them. So the first thing I need to share about raising such a child is that as a parent, as a caregiver, and as a teacher, you need to be very selective. You need to be careful, especially when it concerns discipline. What do you consider a discipline issue with such a child? What would you go for to discipline such a child for? What kind of battles do you want to choose? Do you want, to pursue with such a child? So being selective means that you're not just always looking out for their mistakes. You are, when it comes to discipline, you are going straight at obvious acts of defiance. And what is an obvious act of defiance on a child? So an obvious act of defiance has to pass a certain criteria. Like if as a parent or as a teacher, you've already set the rules. You've told the child, we do not this. In this house, we do not swear. We do not use curse words. So you've already set out the rule. You've already told this child, this one we do not negotiate about. No cursing, no using curse words, no swearing. That is just an example. So if you've already set this rule, the second criteria is, does the child know the rule? Because sometimes as an adult, you can set a rule and the child doesn't understand what it means, what the rule means. So you need to explain and break it down depending on age. Use age-appropriate words. When you need to give examples, please go ahead and expound. When you say no swearing, what exactly do you mean? When you say no using curse words, Will you need to say examples of those curse words so the child knows automatically these are words that are not allowed in this space? And the third criteria is the child, having been given the role, having known and understood the role, now goes ahead and breaks the rule. So if that criteria is met, we can consider that a defiant, an obvious act of defiance. So in that case, then you can dismiss such a child. There are other mistakes that are not obvious acts of defiance. You know, there are things that are just age appropriate, like a child teasing their sibling. Would you consider that an act of defiance? Definitely no. This is just what children do. So if a child is teasing their sibling, or maybe just being a little silly at the dinner table, messing up the house, coming in from school and, you know, throwing the bag or leaving the bag by the doorstep, not making their bed, for instance, not wanting to shower. I'm not saying that we should let children not shower, but I'm looking at age appropriate behavior. You know, things that you will hear a child has done and you'll go like, even my child at that age struggles with that. So things that a child is likely to struggle with at a certain age, we will consider those as age appropriate behaviors and mistakes. You know, of course, such mistakes will annoy any parent or any adult. It's not funny to walk into your house, coming in, you know, fatigued and tired from work, and you just find books strewn all over, bags on the doorcase. It's not funny. It's not comfortable. Such behaviors could get under your skin as a parent and as a caregiver. But the question is this worth really? Is it a battle that is worth? So when you talk about being selective, we are saying that as an adult, as a parent, as a caregiver, as a teacher, you will need to be selective. Where do you expend your energy so that you don't go ranting and, you know, getting fatigued over everything, even things that are just age appropriate for your child. So the first thing is be selective in raising a strong-willed child. As a parent, as a teacher, or as a caregiver, you will need to be empathetic. You know, when you are empathetic about a child's emotions, you build better connections. And when you're able to connect with your child, most likely you're able to influence them. There is better influence over someone when there is a connection. But when you're totally disconnected with someone's emotions and with someone's, issues, then you are less likely to be connected with them. So how do you relate with someone, with your child, when you are not connected with them? So you need to be empathetic. All emotions are valid. There is no emotion that is invalid. It is okay for your strong-willed child to be angry. It is okay for your strong-willed child to feel like they have a point and they need they need to prove that point for you. So don't get angry. Understand. Come from the point of understanding. I understand that you're feeling annoyed that I didn't allow you get your way, that I didn't allow you pick an ice cream that time, that I didn't allow you go out with your friends. I understand that you are feeling sad that I didn't allow you for that sleepover, for example. So when you acknowledge, when you validate their feelings and their emotions, it becomes easier for you to have some influence over them. Because remember, we are talking about strong-willed children, meaning that they want to have their way. In fact, they are being right. Their being right is more important to them than anything else. They want to come out and tell you, I needed to do this because of 1, 2, 3, and 4. So it's not in your place now to invalidate or to make them feel like they don't have a right to feel or to want things done their way. Your duty is to guide. Remember, at the end of the day, you are the adult in the equation. The child is strong-willed, but you are the adult in this equation. So again, in raising a strong-willed child, you will need to be consistent. It is important to be consistent in raising any child. But this is one trait that is going to help you a lot more with strong-willed children. Because, strong-willed children will push the boundaries. They'll want to stretch, they'll want to test. They'll want to see how far they can push you. They will come again. They don't get weary. But remember, they are children, so they are younger than you and they are more energetic. So you are likely to grow weary and give up. And they know that. So that is why they are likely to come again and again and again and again. So, mommy, did you say there are no sleepovers? That is my friend, mom. You even met their mother in the supermarket. We go to the same church. Do you really mean there are no sleepovers? They'll come over and over again. So, as a parent, you will need to be very consistent with your you need to be very consistent with your guidelines. So what you said this week has to hold next week. It has to hold next month. It has to hold all through. So that when they come to you over and over again, you remain victorious. You are not wavering. So if you're changing and changing, the strong-willed child actually keeps winning over you because they know even when you say, however little they are, even they know when sometimes mommy says we are going to the supermarket to get milk and we are not going to get candy or crisps today. But sometimes mommy gets into the supermarket and having said earlier that there are no candies, mommy ends up buying candies. So mom can change, mom wavers in what she says. So you will need to be consistent and very just very consistent in what you say and the guidelines that you have set. That way they learn to respect you and they learn to keep the boundaries. In raising a strong-willed child, again, you will need to be calm. I don't want to say quiet, but calm. It's general advice, general parenting advice that as parents we shouldn't yell at our children. I know, of course, the temptation to yell at our children is usually quite high. But if yelling can work for certain children, it doesn't work for a strong-willed child. The more you yell, the more it appears to them like it's an obvious power struggle. You are trying to silence them through, I think, the most simplistic of ways. You don't want to reason with them, and the more they push harder. So you will need to communicate what you want to say, to set your guidelines in a calm way, in a quiet way. Strong-willed children thrive in reason. But if you're just coming, raising your voice and shouting and, showing your frustrations, the strong-willed child will be looking at you and thinking, can I really look up to this person? Yes, so if you're a parent or a teacher dealing with a strong-willed child, we are not saying you subdue yourself. I'm not saying, you fatigue yourself with explanations and guidelines. It's just as simple as be calm, communicate with sternness, confidence, be confident and calm. Communicate with sternness what you need to communicate. You don't have to raise your voice because if raising your voice works for the other children, this may never work for a strong-willed child. So generally, raising a strong-willed child is not easy. It's not easy at all. Even dealing with one in a classroom setup is not easy. But as the adult here, you will need to be positive. What you would look at as defiance and stubbornness, you can look at it as assertiveness, as independence, as persistence, and as energetic. You can decide to be positive in how you look at this child. Don't look at them as difficult children to deal with. Look at your child and say, my child is energetic. My child is resolute. My child is determined. My child is assertive. My child is expressive. When you look at them positively, you realize it is not your job as an adult, as a parent, as a teacher, as a caregiver. It's not your job to tame the will out of them. You are not required to tone them down. That is not your work as a parent. Your work is not to overhaul their personality. You are not out there to change them from who they are to make them something a little more subtle and easy to deal with. That is not your work. Your work as a parent is to redirect all this energy in ways that it can work for your child and it can work for you. And that can only happen if you're looking at your child from a positive point of view. Because look, this child you may be thinking is stubborn, is not stubborn. This is a strong-willed child. While it may be difficult bringing up such a child from a very young age, all the way to all the stages of parenting, it will later be such a great joy to look at your child as this adult who has grown up to be an uncompromising person, someone who does not just know what they want, but goes straight for what they want. Someone who doesn't compromise on their integrity, a strong-willed person. So we need to have the end on sight. Let's look at it at this point as you parent this child. See the end. Look at them and see, I have an uncompromising child. This child does not waver if they know this is right. Because remember, strong-willed children, once they set their heart on something, it becomes very difficult for their brains to switch gears. So while it may be so difficult to raise up a strong-willed child, have the end in sight. Look at these children as adults in the future who will be uncompromising, unshakable, and determined. I am sure we would all love to have such kind of children. So instead of looking at them as, tiring to raise, be proud of them. Redirect that energy and look at the end. And while at it, hold on for the ride, however tough it is. Do not give in to the temptation to tame their spirit. Strong-willed children are the children who actually change the world.